Bonjour, bonsoir, dear friends. Bienvenue, JCB Live. Happy hour in the hour of Yonville. A beautiful sunny day. We have a great friend. Can you believe I've been knowing this young, charming man for a quarter of a century? I've seen him since the first day tasting wine. 25 years later, we still do. He is known as one of the most amazing entrepreneurs in the world of wine. He's done in many businesses what we wish we could do in one. He's a natural-born entrepreneur, a serial innovator, and he's done one of the most difficult things on earth, which is to fly away from the United States, establish a business in China at the time when nobody did it, and build the leading distribution company in China. And not just Hong Kong, mainland China. He sold it, came back to the US, and again, rebuilt other businesses. I'm very pleased to name him a great friend and to really look at him as a great inspiration on culture, innovation, art, business, leadership, charm. Because when he goes to the nightclub, he makes sure that he is being noticed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to bring now the new owner as well of Vinfolio, where you could keep your wonderful wine. The charming, irresistible, and I know you love him in the chat. Send me some message. I'm the only one with his private cell phone. Don Saint-Pierre! Woo! Bonjour, Don.
Hey, Jean-Charles. Thank you, my friend.
Hey, what an introduction, isn't it?
Yes. I'm nothing less from you.
So honored to see you on the live. Welcome. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
So, Don, bubbles together. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first time we actually met?
San Francisco. I guess it was 1997.
Indeed.
Yeah, 1997, San Francisco. We were looking for some suppliers to our business in China and came to see you. And oddly enough, I think the first wines we bought were not French. They were Californian.
That was quite amazing. So, dear friends, as we met, I was starting the business. I had a tiny little office in the Tenderloin. And here Don Saint-Pierre comes with his father. Together, very great friend, they're very close, starting a business together. And tell us the context, because I think it's fascinating for people to go back. 24 years ago, you are very successful in business in the US, and suddenly you have an idea.
Well, I guess it started probably in my sophomore year of high school when we moved to Jakarta, Indonesia. So I was living in Michigan. I was born in Canada, but we moved to Michigan when I was about 7 years old. And I'd finished my first year of high school, and my father walked into the bedroom to say that we were moving to Jakarta. And I thought, Jakarta, where's that? Jakarta where? So we got out the map and we figured out where Indonesia was, and that's where we moved to. And that was really the beginning of my international journey, which really changed my life. And 2 years in Jakarta going to high school, then my final year we moved to Tokyo, and I graduated from high school in Tokyo. And along the way, interestingly enough, I developed an interest in James Clavell novels.
For sure.
So he wrote some great books. One of them was called Taipan, the other Noble House, King Rat. And I just thought to myself, what a cool idea of doing business in China. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. And that was really the beginning of my interest in China. And my father and I, growing up, we were best friends. And I think we'd always wanted to work together, to do something together. And so we had both made some money in our lives and decided to put that together and start a new business. And China was the place that I wanted to do that. It was the place where he lived. We'll maybe talk a little bit about that later.
Of course. What an experience.
And so he and I decided to start a business doing something. We didn't know what.
Yes.
Importing something to China. We were pretty clear that the idea needed to be focused around importing things into China as opposed to making things in China and shipping them out of China. And at that time, it was a little bit different to think about doing
Yeah.
it that way, because most foreigners were engaged in business in China to make things
Yes.
at a low cost and ship them out. And my dad and I decided we wanted to bring stuff in and sell into China. And
Which
that was
is
the beginning.
which is amazing because it's a major shift. You've done the opposite of what everybody was doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And explain us though why you went to Asia, because that's a very cool story. This is how I met your dad. He
Right.
handed me that great book
Right.
he had written.
Yeah, my dad. I mean, my father's a fantastic story. He grew up in Quebec. He moved to Windsor, Ontario. Graduated from high school. Tried to be a professional baseball player. Almost succeeded, but as he says, he was better at hitting, singles and doubles as opposed to home runs, and didn't quite make it to the major leagues. And took a job in the mailroom at Ford Motor Company. And from there, he rose through the ranks and ended up becoming a senior executive in the automobile industry, and got the opportunity to move overseas. And first it was Indonesia, second was Japan, and then third was Beijing.
Wow.
And
The big move.
the big move. And so that was in 1984, 85. And at that time, there weren't a lot of foreigners in China.
Yeah.
There were certainly some, but there were relatively few, and he was running what was at that time, I guess, America's most well-known joint venture, or starting America's most well-known joint venture, which was called Beijing Jeep.
For sure.
And it was a venture between the Chinese government and American Motors, which produced Jeep at the time. And so that was really the beginning of our adventure in China.
Mm-hmm.
And when he moved to Beijing after I graduated from high school in Tokyo, I moved to the United States to go to university, and I would visit him during the summers in
Yes.
Beijing. And that's, in addition to the James Clavell novels earlier in my life, that was the other element that really got me hooked on China, was going there during the summers and seeing Beijing and seeing what it was like in 85, 86, and 87.
And culturally, your fabulous wife, Monica, is from China.
Right, Shanghai.
Shanghai.
Very important to differentiate.
Forgive me, Monica. Would you forgive me? Indeed. What's the attraction for you culturally?
Well, I guess first, she's beautiful.
Of course.
Second, smart. Third, as our relationship has evolved, she's just really helped me understand how to survive and thrive in China. I mean, I met Monica at a time where our business was, just kind of beginning to grow, and she just helped me enormously understand what doing business, what people were like in China, in ways that I just did not understand before.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hate to use the word partnership, because we are passionate, we love each other, but it's also a great partnership in terms of me learning from her, and hopefully her learning from me a little bit.
Do you think she is?
Well, she's Shanghainese, so there's probably not a whole lot of that happens, but there's maybe a little bit.
Tell us as well about what makes you so attracted to China and what is so exciting about it. Because I'm with you. I'm fascinated, I'm attracted, I'm enlightened, and I'm energized by China and the Chinese culture and people. Give us your version of that.
I mean, it's adventure for me. That was the first thing. It was
Yeah.
just this land of adventure where everything was new for foreigners at that time. I mean, when I was visiting my dad in the mid '80s, there were, China had really shut down for many, many years.
Yeah.
Prior to the mid '40s, and so there was this period of time where the country was quite closed. And when it started opening up, I just thought, well, this is a tremendous opportunity. Not understanding as much as I should have the challenges that awaited us. But I think the most important thing for me was this sense of adventure.
For sure.
And challenge. I mean, I think it was, I guess my father taught me sports when I was younger. I played a lot of sports and just enjoyed the challenge of athletics, and that carried over to the way I enjoyed business, was doing business that way.
And we talk often about the differences between China and the rest of the world. What brings us together? Because you brought the table, you brought the wines, you brought the luxury products to China. And I cannot wait for you to share more about this because what a success. Tell us more about what brings the cultures of the world together rather than differences.
I think for me the most attractive, interesting, intriguing element of doing business in China was the ability to connect with people and the ability to create friendships, like great friendships.
Yes.
And even though the cultures are so different, there's this underlying element to how I perceive relationships and success in life, and the same for Chinese, which is built on trust and friendship. And for me, that was enormously important to our ability to succeed. To my ability to succeed is that I could build great friendships, even though culturally, we were so different. And that's a super important, and that's not the case in all countries in Asia.
I see.
There are other countries in Asia that, culturally are also very different, but it's harder for foreigners, I believe, to build true friendships. Whereas in China, I think it's much easier, and that translated for us, in a confidence to build our team. And super important to understand that a lot of people would say to be successful as a foreigner in China, you have to have a joint venture partner. You have to have a local partner.
Yeah.
And through my father's experience, that was not the case. What you needed to have was great local team members. And so we chose that path. We did not go down the path of having a joint venture partner.
Like Jeep with a partner.
Yeah.
Because did that partnership with Jeep, because your father was leading it, I think he was reporting to Lee Iacocca, right?
He wasn't reporting directly to Lee Iacocca. In fact, in the beginning, owned by American Motors, Chrysler wasn't involved. It was only later that Chrysler took over American Motors, and then my father inherited Lee Iacocca and a guy named Bob Lutz and some other senior people at Chrysler. Before that, he was really dealing with the American Motors team, and I think that they were open to letting him manage the opportunities and the challenges more than what a Chrysler would have been.
I see.
Yeah. But again, that point of being able to create friendships and being able to create trust was incredibly important for us to be able to build ASC without a joint venture partner.
So explain what you started, because dear friends, you have one of the top 10 most influential men in the wine world, the man of the year in 2011, awarded by the Wine Enthusiast as the man to make a difference in the world of wine. That's a big deal. You went to China, and from zero, Don, because a lot of our friends here are looking into ideas, and a lot of them are big entrepreneurs themselves. Share with us what was your vision and how you did it, because I was very fortunate, thanks to this wine that you wanted us to try. By the way, we need to have a toast to it. Sure. Don has been importing this wonderful winery named Fortin de France. I'm going to let you describe the wine shortly, into China and build it as a huge success. It was a big, big success. And so, Don, from the wines all the way to how you started ASC, because that's, I think, belonging to the case study history books at any top universities around the world, because I believe it's one of the hardest things to ever do.
It was hard. Before I do that, though, the wine that we're drinking, Fortin de France, I think it tastes much better than I remember it, because when I remembered it, someone else made it.
Oh, thank you.
Then you bought it, and you've definitely improved it.
Well, we've improved it because you kept selling more. And we said, well, it must be working.
Yeah.
But can you believe La Livinière? This is a great one.
Yeah, it actually.
This is really tasting good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that we're surprised. We knew it would be. So, Laurent, I know you're watching, who is our fabulous winemaker at Fortin. La Livinière is really that amazing appellation in the Minervois, Has to be 18 months in French show
Yeah.
can.
Well, the only problem is that if we had this wine in China way back when, we probably would not have been able to sell very much because the cost would have been much higher, I think. So,
That's
it's just
right.
so much better.
Now we're drinking it.
So I guess back to ASC, I mean, our vision was to bring wine into China because we thought the Chinese consumers would be interested in drinking wine.
Yeah.
And so as simple as that, we were looking for a category of product that we thought demand was at a certain level when we started the business, and we saw it growing quickly into the future. Partly because the Chinese government was trying to persuade its population to drink less baijiu, less white spirits, and more grape wine for a lot of different reasons. So we felt the Chinese government was behind the overall consumption trends. There were many challenges we faced. One of them was the taxes on importing wine to China.
Very high,
when we
right?
started were very high because China had not yet entered WTO, and at that time the taxes were about 115% of the value.
It makes wines inaccessible.
It was, but in some ways it allowed us to start
Yeah.
because there weren't a lot of other people that were so stupid to start a business when tariffs were 115%. So I guess my father and I were thinking, well, the barriers to entry were really opportunities.
Yeah.
So that was one barrier. The other barrier was that the people that we were going to sell the wines to didn't know anything about the wines. And that went from the five-star hotel food and beverage manager to the Chinese restaurant owner. There was really very little understanding of wine. So that was challenge number two. Challenge number three was that the infrastructure of distribution was pretty much non-existent. So, there were no
You had to create everything.
Yeah, there was no wholesalers for us to sell into. So we had to build our own wholesale retail network. And so education, tariffs, lack of infrastructure, producers that were interested in working with us, I think saw China at that time as being, potentially interesting, but not that interesting. Hong Kong was sort of more where it was at. So we had to convince producers that this was going to be an important market, which
that's right.
Today when you say that, seems kind of strange that you need to convince someone.
Yeah, but at the time, I mean, I remember I was a believer day one.
Yeah.
Obviously, we started to do business as Pierre. That was the first one we did together. But, we all knew the awakening of China would be enormously powerful. But many people, it's true, did not believe it.
Yeah.
And how did you build it, as you're going to describe the wine, into such a success? Don, give us the keys of success at the time and within the wine world there.
I think first we were stubborn enough to persevere.
Yeah.
So I think as a pioneer, as someone starting a new business, the idea of sticking around long enough for things to work out well, that's a very important thing to do.
Yes.
But it's very hard to do because, every day you're confronted with things that really aren't very appealing. So, one example is we would oftentimes get competitors that would issue complaints against us.
Yes.
Local Chinese competitors. And, so we would get the local authorities coming in, questioning, taking things away, making it difficult. And that would happen on a regular basis. So, the legal environment in which we were operating was very, very uncertain, which is the way China is. You just
So people can show up at any time in your office.
Yeah, and they can pretty much take anything they want, and you're basically guilty until you're proven innocent in many respects in the legal system.
Another way to look at the world, isn't it?
Exactly. So all of those things combine to create a really difficult situation, and so perseverance. Number one, I think we were stubborn enough and maybe dumb enough in some ways to keep going. And then number two, we got lucky. I mean, I think there were just certain things that happened along the way. For example, my father and I invested all the money we had at that point in our lives to start ASC, and within about 18 months or maximum 24 months, we had pretty much run out all the money. And
So what do you do then?
yeah, well, what do you do? And so my dad was attending this conference in Beijing, this Austrian trade conference, and he went out because he was so fed up with the dialogue of the conference to go smoke a cigarette. And he smoked like 3 packs of Marlboro Reds a day, so he was out.
I remember
smoking a cigarette, and he noticed this guy standing next to him, and he was smoking. And they started up a conversation, and they started talking about how much they smoked. And my dad said, "Oh, I smoke like 3 packs a day." And this Austrian gentleman said, "Well, I don't measure my cigarettes in packs. I measure them in meters." So he was like, he smoked like way more than that. So, anyways, they developed this, sort of camaraderie around tobacco, and that led to my father saying, "Well, what are you doing here?" And he said, "Well, I own a winery in Argentina." And it turned out to be a guy named Gernot Lange Swarovski of the Swarovski crystal family. And Mr. Swarovski ended up investing in our business, all because of that cigarette break. And that got us over the hump.
Did he measure investment in meters as well?
Well, in the end, he could have measured his return in many, many meters of
Good for you.
of euros. But one small example of being in the right place at
Yes.
the right time, and that combined with a lot of hard work, a lot of perseverance, focusing on education. We were, the first company to really focus on
Yes.
education, and we brought WSET to China for the first time. We were the first licensed program provider of WSET in China. We translated Jancis Robinson and Hugh Johnson's World Wine Atlas, with our team, right? And you'd ask, well, why would an importer put so much focus on education? And really, it was geared towards building trust. And in China, the consumers were so unaware of the product that there was a lack of trust in anything. They didn't know brands very well at all.
It's reversely the same if we would import their white spirits.
Sure.
Would we know the difference of each? It's the same language.
Yeah.
So without the education, we cannot empower them to make the super premium decision that you were promoting.
Yeah, and it ended up being that our focus on education created trust around our brand. And that was incredibly important to our success, because we were importing brands that were famous in the countries they were produced, whether it was Piedmont or whether it was Tuscany or whether it was Napa or whether it was Bordeaux or Burgundy. But most of the Chinese consumers had no idea about these brands.
Right.
So what differentiated this brand from that brand? No one knew.
No one knew.
But if they could trust the importer, because on the back of every bottle, so on the back of a bottle like this, you would have to put a Chinese label. And that Chinese label would need to describe all the things on the front label, plus a whole bunch of other information the Chinese government insisted on having. But on the back label, we put ASC, our brand. And that
became the seal of quality.
Right, exactly. That became the seal of quality and the seal of trust. And so by focusing on education, by investing in education, we ended up building trust, which then built our brand. And that created an enormous amount of sales, ultimately, because customers would walk into a retail store and they would look at the front of the label and they would say, I don't know about that. And they'd look at the back of the label and say, oh, ASC. Okay, it must be good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, talking about being good, because that wine is in your hand, why don't you give us a little description of the Minervois? And on that note, I'd love for you to define what you mean by trust. What is trust? I know it's a deep question.
Right. Well, I mean, as I said earlier, this wine is so much different from what I remember Forton to be. It's got a balance, a smooth texture. It's got some length, which is, Forton never had length before.
Yeah. We liked short legs at Forton in the past. Now we like long legs. Short skirts, long legs.
Yeah, it definitely was short legs before. But, I mean, that's just a wonderfully balanced, great quality wine.
Thank you. So, on the point of trust, because then you come back to the US, it's an amazing story, dear friends. You'll hear more. What is trust in China and trust in general in business? And how important is it? And how do you define it?
I mean, ultimately, I think it's, you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and your partners, your customers can rely upon you to do the right thing. You're, and that sounds so simple.
Yes.
But in an environment like China, it was quite challenging to continue to do the right thing when there were so many others that were cutting corners and doing things the wrong way to increase profitability. But for us, trust not only was important as it related to the consumer, but it was equally as important as it related to the producers that we represented. And we took the view that the more transparent we could be with our partners, our producers, in terms of what was happening in the market, through reports, through giving them information about things that our competitors just didn't want to give them for fear that they would somehow make their position less strong.
That's right.
Right? And you see this all the time.
All the time.
So, our view was, let's be as transparent as we possibly can because we're going to build trust. And it's not as if this producer is going to want to try and take over the distribution themselves. And we knew for a fact that we were better than our competitors in most cases. So where were they going to go?
That's right.
The most important thing we could do was build that trust with them.
For sure.
Because China was a place where it was always disappointing you. So the more transparency they had in terms of what the real market was like on the ground, the less disappointed they would be.
I see.
Right? Because China was a place where you as a producer inevitably have a neighbor, and in a place like Napa, I guess most neighbors get along, but that's not always the case in the world of wine.
No.
And so in many parts of the world of wine, you have neighbors that are jealous of one another. And if one neighbor says they just shipped 5 containers to China, and the other neighbor's thinking to himself, I've only shipped 1.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a big problem.
What's happening?
So, it's very important that those producers understand what's really happening in the market so they can say to their neighbor, yeah, you might have shipped 5, but they're sitting on a dock somewhere going bad. And eventually those wines are going to be sold, and the people that drink those wines are going to think about the brand not so well because that wine tastes terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, very well said. And which is amazing in your life, you kind of go full circle. You live in Tokyo, and then you find the buyer of your business in Japan.
Right.
It's amazing your path. Do you believe in destiny?
I think there's a very important part of life that is related to destiny. But I also think that we have the ability to react to our circumstances that will create different outcomes.
That's right.
So
you think we can influence the outcome?
I think yes. I think that because we have, as a human being, we have the ability to say yes or no when we're confronted with a challenge, an opportunity, a hardship,
Yes.
So, but there are many times in my life where I say to myself, well, that was just destined, that just seemed like it was.
It happened and
it was written away. Yeah.
Well, you're attracted by China, you marry Monica. You love Japan, and suddenly you sell your business to a Japanese Suntory, one of the most notorious Japanese firms. I mean, does it happen by accident, or is it somehow written?
Well, I'm not sure I love Japan. I mean, I think I enjoyed the experience of going to high school in Japan.
Yeah.
But and to this day, I don't believe I would be a successful businessman in Japan because I don't think I have the patience to be successful inside Japan. But I think I knew that Suntory was the right partner for us early on when we decided that the best course for us in the future was to find an investor and monetize what we had created.
Yeah.
And we went through the normal process that companies go through to sell a business. We brought in a financial advisory firm, and We had we had 40 companies that were interested in acquiring us, 20 of which were private equity, financial, and 20 of which were strategic. But, in the end, it came down to the company that I thought was going to be the right company, which was Suntory, because it just made sense for them. At least I thought it did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to.
Yeah.
They're still going.
They're still going.
And they're still importing Fortin de France.
They're still importing Fortin de France, and they're still importing many of the brands that my father and I brought into China.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of loyalty and trust in that.
Well, and Suntory is a company that epitomizes this idea of trust and loyalty. I think they are a company that really does what they say they're going to do.
That's what I love.
They may move at a slower pace than what entrepreneurs like myself would like to see, but they follow through and do what they say they're going to do.
I know. We have our friend Suntory is an importer in Japan, and they are phenomenal. They actually import Fortin in Japan as well. The world is small. It was meant to happen.
That was one of the overlaps in our portfolios that I noticed early on, was that they imported Fortin and we imported Fortin.
A good overlap. Yeah. So, as we're going to go back to the US, maybe a few key learnings in China you want to share. Because if someone had experience in China over, 17, 18 years of your life, you have, at all level, in any circumstances. So if you were to say, dear friends, those are my big learnings and where I see China, tell us as well where you see China, because it's what a phenomenon.
Yeah. I think we separate that in terms of the wine business, and I think in general the future trajectory of China. And I think that both opportunities, general opportunity, wine opportunity, are enormous in China. I think wine is unique in the sense that I think foreigners will continue to play an important role in the opportunities for wine in China in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily know that's true for other industries, because I think the domestic industries are catching up in many different sectors. And certainly the local entrepreneurs, local Chinese businessmen are incredibly capable and don't need stupid foreigners like me anymore, with perhaps the exception of industries like wine.
That's right.
And so I think not only does wine have a great future in China, but also I think foreigners can play an important role in that future. In terms of my learnings, and specific to wine, one of the challenges of our business that we had in terms of our model was that we didn't have a lot of technology as it relates to interaction with our consumers, our customers, or our suppliers. And so I think technology is something that I really wanted to get more involved in. I know it's a very broad statement.
No, but it's important.
Let's just say
we're behind in the world of wine without any questions. Yeah.
And I also think the idea of being an importer that then would sell to a wholesaler, who would sell to a retailer, who would sell to the end consumer, I think the more layers that exist between the producer and the consumer, the more dangerous your business model is.
Yes.
Both for the producer and the layers in between. So my idea, my learning, one of the other learnings I had is that besides technology is that you either want to own the product or you want to own the consumer. And being in the middle is a very dangerous place to be, which is where we were in terms of how we built the model.
That's right.
Now, I think at that time when we built the model, it made sense. But today, I don't think it does. So that was another important learning. I think the third learning for me is, and this is a little bit tied to technology, is I didn't want to have 1,500 employees. I think
so it's a big team.
The challenge associated with managing people, that many people, with that many offices, we ended up having, I think, 26 offices in Greater China, was enormous, and it really took away from the focus on innovation, on on just doing things really well. Now we needed all those people because of the model we had.
Of course.
But if you have a different model that requires less people because you have better technology that gets you either closer to the consumer or owning the product,
That's
I think
right.
that's a better way to go.
Which you finally succeeded to do. So, dear friends, I'm going to let you finish this because we're going to go back to America now.
Okay.
We started in China, France. Now Don sells the business. Key learnings on China, so thank you for that. Very, very informative, very interesting. You decide to go back to the United States. You sell the business. You said to Monica, we're moving to America. How did she feel about that, by the way? I'm going to let you finish. French and Californian, we can mix, but maybe, I know it's a Bordeaux style, one of our favorite wines.
That was one of the wines that we imported.
That's right. Yeah. You did.
Yeah.
You see, we nostalgic, dear friends, to history, maybe.
Yeah. To Patrick finding the wine, wherever he's at.
That's right. He did. He went to his own personal cellar.
That's very nice, huh?
Oof.
Boy,
Alexander Valley.
California jumps out. What was the question?
Well, you come back to the US now.
Right.
And you basically did exactly, on one side you're the supplier,
Right.
and the other you own the consumer. So you really basically build your other business in the US in that sense.
Segue into why we moved to California. What did Monica think of it? I mean, she was the one that actually decided to move earlier.
Really?
So, we have 3 healthy, beautiful, wonderful daughters.
That's right.
And at that time in Shanghai, we were going to move to the United States anyways, but at that time the pollution was getting a bit worse. School education was okay, but we thought it could be better.
Yeah.
So, Monica and I decided for her to move back with the girls a year early. So she moved in 2013, and in 2014 I joined her. We had a house in San Diego. She moved there. I joined her, and she discovered, not we, very quickly that San Diego, while a beautiful place for vacation, was not going to be the place for us to live full time. And at that time, we decided to move to San Francisco, which we did in 2015. And at that point in my life, Jean-Charles, I was not really clear on what I wanted to do next, understanding that those learnings that I described before would influence what I did decide to do.
Of course.
And got to San Francisco and reconnected with a number of friends that lived in the city, lived in Napa, lived in Sonoma, and was made aware of a business called Vinfolio. And it really checked a lot of the boxes that I had previously described in terms of learnings and the direction I wanted to go.
Yes.
And in March of 2016, I invested with a very, very close friend of mine, of Monica's family friend, Alan Warburg, who you had on JCB Live recently.
Absolutely.
And so Alan invested with me into Vinfolio, and the idea was to invest an amount that would give us a meaningful share, and I would run the business, and then decide if it made sense to continue to increase our share and get more involved in terms of capital, which we subsequently did. And the general idea is very much about technology, end consumer, trust.
So you've shifted a little bit. You move closer to the consumer.
Yeah, and I also think that if you look at the success of digital platforms like Amazon, like Disney, Apple News, these are all platforms that have fantastic content, and I see a world in which consumers are interested in engaging with platforms that have large content, selections of content. And for me, when I moved to the United States, a lot of the friends I had in Europe producing wine were telling me that the 3-tier distribution system was not working very well for them, particularly at the high end. at the fine wine end. So being of the mindset of how do we provide a different solution for those producers to connect with the end consumers.
That's right.
Without having to depend on the three-tier system. That was very interesting to me. And so Vinfolio was a platform that could, I thought, evolve into that in the future. At the same time, it had a storage business that was quite interesting. When I walked into the warehouse for the first time, I was amazed. There was probably $200 million worth of wine that it was storing for its clients, and that's a lot of wine, obviously, but more than that, it's a lot of data that's stored about those wines from the consumers, and there's a lot of customers that really are not drinking these wines anymore, that have moved on to different wines or just have too much. And I've always been attracted the idea of marketplaces and, again, technology, but enabling consumers to interact with each other.
That's right.
And when you have such a large amount of product in one place, if you can use the data to interact with the consumers to let them know that, Mr. Smith, you've got 300 bottles of 1990 Lafite, and the last time you drank a bottle of that was a year ago, and the drink by dates are coming up sometime in the next 5 years, but you are drinking a lot of Sassicaia, and you've only got 5 bottles of that, it would probably make sense for you to trade some of your Lafite, nothing against Lafite, and buy some more Sassicaia.
That's pretty amazing. So developing the model of, besides intuition, patterns, artificial intelligence, understanding where you should go, how you should build your collection. On that note, do you see more collectors in the world of wine? People interested to really build, sellers collect and see that, appreciate, like Bitcoins and Litcoins or
I'm
whatever?
not sure I see more collectors. I think I see less collectors, but I think I see more interest to invest in wine. Okay. I think when I mean less collectors, I think the consumer of the future that has the capacity to buy these types of wines, I think, is less interested in building a collection. They're more interested in accessing a wide range of product to purchase, perhaps older vintages ready to drink, that they can consume and then buy again.
I see.
So I think that's the direction we see the younger consumer moving, that has excess liquidity, that has wealth. At the same time, and I don't know whether it's only because of Bitcoin, but there's certainly an increased interest to invest in wine.
Nice.
But I think this is something that is not very well understood. I think that most of the investment products around wine in the past have really not performed all that well for a variety of different reasons.
That's right.
So I think there's interest, but I think you need to be careful and understand the real cost associated with investing in wine.
Where do you see, in fact, big questions, dear friends, the futures of wine? On all its facets. And I know I'm asking a $1 trillion question, whoever knows. But if someone knows, dear friends, Vinfolio is the place you want to store your wine, is the place you want to exchange your wine, is the place you want to do the marketplace. So you see what's happening.
Well, for us, our idea is that we're creating a true marketplace that's fueled by great technology to enable sellers and buyers, right? And the sellers are producers, but they're also consumers.
For sure.
Right? So it's both ways. And it's a managed marketplace whereby we're not relying upon retailers to fulfill products for delivery. We are actually managing the products bottle by bottle to ensure provenance, quality, service, all the things that I think are necessary in the luxury fine wine space.
Absolutely.
It's in where we've chosen to focus, and this is important. I think Vinfolio is focused on fine wine. I think fine wine gets tossed around a lot. Some people might say fine wine is $30 and above. I would say fine wine is, at minimum $100 and above. And I think in that space, you have to have some high touch element. There has to be a high level of service there of people that really understand the product. So it's got to be a combination of people that understand the product, logistics that are capable of managing bottle by bottle, and great technology.
That's right.
That uses data in a way that gives consumers an understanding of what they have, what they're drinking, what they don't have enough of, what they have too much of, right? And bring all that together.
That's right.
Right. So I think all of that is the direction we're going. We're a long way from that, though, Jean-Charles. When I invested in Vinfolio, it was basically an e-commerce platform, storage, cloud-based software that people use to manage their collections. None of the data was being used. Systems weren't talking to each other. Big mess, right? But that's where the opportunity is to fix that.
So you're excited?
Yeah, very excited. I'm very excited. I think if we look at the last 12 months, it's been challenging in some ways. It's been challenging for everybody in some ways. But I think it's given us opportunities that perhaps we wouldn't have had otherwise.
Exactly. That's the way I see it. So, dear friends, Vinfolio. So now, Don, you are a serial entrepreneur. Always, many businesses. What inspires you? Besides Monica, the beautiful Monica, of course. And your 3 daughters.
Right. So I think family more and more inspires me. I mean, I think family, meaning Monica and our girls, I think that's a very, very important part of our life. I mean, ultimately, for me, we have to have a balance between, our family, personal, and business. And I think I'm inspired by the fact that I have an opportunity, or I have succeeded in finding a balance that works for me.
That's great.
Between the 3. But I wake up in the morning and I'm just super excited about disrupting things that I don't believe work well.
Yes.
And I think if we look at some of the things we've just spoke about, things don't work well for producers
Yes.
and consumers in the fine wine space. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity there to enhance the producer's understanding and connectivity of the end consumer, and vice versa.
That's right.
So that's really what I'm excited about is, not owning the brand, but creating a platform where producers really can connect. Because you had asked earlier, where the opportunity is, what's missing, and in the fine wine space, the biggest thing that's missing is lack of connectivity between the producer and the consumer. You look at every other luxury consumer product. Producers more and more know their consumers. They're interacting with their consumers.
Exactly.
Right? And that's really not happening in the world of fine wine. Now, Napa and Sonoma, I would say, are a special place in that, you've got the ability to connect with consumers in a way that just frankly doesn't exist in much of Europe. But, you're looking at the 2 biggest markets in the world, the United States and China.
Yes.
And for the most part, the producers have no idea about the consumers, and the consumers have no idea about the producers.
That's right. I won't drink to that, but I'll make a toast for you telling us about your dream. What's your dream now? I'm always curious to ask Don this question because I see him very disciplined, achieving goals, setting them, boom, moving to the next. What's your dream?
It's right now, my dream is to have a great dinner with Monica, you, and Gina tonight.
Of course. That's happening.
But, truly,
thank you for saying that.
I say that, but I believe the more and more as I get older, we have to focus on the things in front of us and live each day.
That's right.
And I think that's incredibly important, and I lose sight of that all the time. I mean, I'm always thinking about what's next and what
Yes.
we're doing next. So I think for me, learning to be better and better at living in the moment
Yes.
is very much of a dream, because I already have enough of the of the characteristic of thinking about how to do this and that in the future.
Indeed,
and
yes.
planning. And
Well, we all.
yeah, and
that
I
way
don't
in
want
many
to.
ways.
I don't want to underplay the importance of planning and thinking about what you want to achieve in the future. I mean, I wake up in the morning and I think about it. I go to sleep at night. I think about it. I think the danger for someone like myself, with the type of personality I have, is that I don't think enough about right now.
That's right, the
today.
present.
Yeah,
Living the present.
living the present. Yeah.
Although I've witnessed Don living the present, dear friends. I won't share it, but I have. Hey, Don, talking about this, what do you think of this wine? You got to tell us. This is one of the first wine you've imported
Yeah,
in China.
yeah. Again, gotten a lot better.
Well, it's the essence of Meritage, Bordeaux style.
Yeah.
For you, a big Bordeaux fan.
Yeah.
Although tonight, not to disappoint Don, we will drink only exclusively for Monica Burgundy.
Yeah.
Because she loves Burgundy, Gina loves Burgundy. Even though we Napa, it's Pinot Noir
Yeah.
and Chardonnay.
So Bordeaux blends produced in Napa, just becoming so important in terms of how we define Napa. Right? And I think this idea of balance,
Yes.
where Napa is not a one-trick pony. It's not about Cabernet Sauvignon. It's about producing great wine of balance.
That's right.
And I think this is an example of that. But the idea of blending together varietals to create great balance and great taste, Napa can do that very well. Joseph Phelps with Insignia was one of the first to do
For
that
sure.
a long time
Fabulous
ago.
wine.
Maybe Rubicon. Who was the first?
Yes.
Who was the first to do a Bordeaux style blend?
Well, I must say, it started really in Sonoma, and it was Leaf.
It was Leaf. Huh?
Prior to all of us coming to this region, it
Yeah.
was them in the late 70s. It was similar to you, a man who came from another industry
Yeah.
or another world. Chip Leaf, who really, in 1979, said, I love Lynch-Bage, I love Rosan Segla, I love, the idea of the alchemy of 5 great varieties. And
Yeah.
he blended it together with great success. And he founded the Meritage Association, based on heritage and merit. And that started there. And then obviously many other things started here in Napa too.
Yeah.
But I think if we want to go as far back as the Count of Buena Vista, he's probably maybe the first one in 1857 who created the proprietor's blend, which is no different than that, a field blend
Do we have some of that?
of tonight.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have you try 1857, dear friends. One of the most highest ranked Bordeaux blend, Napa Valley.
Okay.
But before we go, because dinner is ready, Don, I want you to give everyone the big message. The view of the world. We've been living, of course, all of us, you between China and the US, other places, a difficult 24 months. Not just 12 months, but
Yeah.
overall now it's back into more than 12 months. What's your message to everyone as far as life, as far as wiseness?
Well, I think the first thing is, I've always found that challenges breed not only opportunity, but create character and really give people an opportunity to do things that they otherwise might not wish to do. And so, to the extent that we've all faced challenges, how do we turn those challenges into opportunities to do things differently, and look at life differently? So I think, how we in life deal with problems, deal with tragedies, deal with uncertainties, is oftentimes how we're defined. And it's oftentimes the greatest opportunities we have. And so I've looked at the last 12 months, and I'd said earlier that there's some opportunities that this has created. also a lot of challenges. And I think, and I hate the word challenges, but problems. And you gotta use that as fuel to come up with new ways of engaging in life in ways that you're going to be that much more happy with. So
I love it. Great, path to follow. So Don, I want to thank you for joining us on our live. Dear friends, you got the inspiration of China, the man who created it in China, and the man who back in the US is creating it again. So when you're an entrepreneur, you're truly an entrepreneur, aren't you?
yeah, I would never be able to work for anybody, or at least I wouldn't be able to do it that well.
And which I love is that's a part of Don we'll have to discover another time. He's been in the firearms business.
Yep.
He's been in the alcoholic business, the wine business.
Yep.
No tobacco yet?
Not yet. We'll see.
Maybe a marijuana is
Yeah,
next?
there could be some cannabis in the future. We'll see.
Here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, Don St. Pierre, Man of the Year.
Thanks, John Charles.